I think about that day more than I want to admit. My name is Sarah, and I'm 28, a combat medic. Or at least I was. Funny how one bad night can just ruin everything, even when it's not your fault. And trust me, it wasn't, not really. We were deployed to some dusty, godforsaken place. Afghanistan, Iraq. Who even remembers anymore? They all blend into one hot, sandy blur. Our platoon was always on edge. It was the kind of place where you felt like you were being watched even when you were alone in the latrine. Platoon leader Miller. He was a real piece of work. Always by the book. Always pushing. Always expecting more. Like we weren't already giving everything. He was a growth mindset man type. All about improving and boundaries. Which usually meant he was trying to boundary us into doing more of his work. That day, it was hotter than usual. Even for that hellhole. The air hung thick with dust and the smell of diesel. We'd been on patrol all morning, sweating through our uniforms, just looking for trouble, or trying to avoid it. Depending on who you asked, Miller had us on this perimeter sweep, checking out a village that had been giving us grief. Said there were chatter about insurgents moving through. Always chatter. Half the time, it was just the wind. He looked at me, gave me that intense stare of his. Medic, you're with Johnson on the north side. Clear it. I want a full report back in 30. No shortcuts. Johnson, PFC Johnson? A fresh-faced kid, barely out of high school. A too nice guy through and through. He never said no, never pushed back. He'd do whatever you told him, no matter how stupid. And that was the problem. Really, he just went along with everything. I wasn't feeling it. My boots were rubbing blisters on my heels, and I hadn't slept properly in days. The sun was beating down, making my head throb. I just wanted to be done. 30 minutes to clear that whole stretch. It was ambitious, even for two people moving fast. And Johnson, bless his oblivious heart, was already gathering his gear, looking at me with those wide, eager eyes. Ready, medic? He asked, adjusting his rifle. I just grunted. Miller was watching us, his arms crossed. I could feel his eyes on me, judging, always judging. He probably thought I was lazy. He always acted like I was effort minimizer, like I didn't pull my weight, even though I was doing twice the work of half the guys in that unit. They were all bumbling idiots. Honestly, I had to pick up their slack constantly. So we started, me and Johnson, trudging through the dusty scrub. The heat was oppressive. Every step felt like wading through treacle. Johnson, being Johnson, was meticulously checking every shadow, every rock, every clump of weeds. He was so thorough, it was painful. He'd stop, squat down, peer into some ditch like he was looking for buried treasure. Medic, look at this. Could be a pressure plate, he'd whisper, pointing at a flattened patch of dirt. It was always just a flattened patch of dirt. I was getting more and more annoyed. We were never going to make that 30-minute deadline at this rate. Miller would be on our asses. He'd make us do extra drills, pull late shifts. He'd give me that disappointed look, the one that said, I expected more from you. Private. It was his passive-aggressive way of messing with you. He was always doing that, always trying to control our comfort zone, which meant making us as uncomfortable as possible. Johnson, I snapped. We don't have all day. Just move it. If you see something, say something. Otherwise, keep walking. He flinched, but he sped up a little. For about 5 minutes. Then he was back to his slow, deliberate pace. He was so frustratingly good at his job, in a way that just made everything harder. He wasn't trying to be difficult. That was the thing. He just didn't understand that sometimes you had to cut corners to get things done. Sometimes you had to look like you were doing everything right, even if you weren't. We reached a particularly dense section of brush, thorny and unforgiving. It would take forever to pick our way through it properly. I looked at my watch. 20 minutes gone. We had barely covered a third of the perimeter. My stomach clenched. Miller was going to chew me out. He was going to make an example of me. He was always trying to find a reason to put me down. He was probably jealous of me. Honestly, I was good at my job, and I didn't take his crap like the others did. He probably hated that. Johnson, just go around, I said, pointing to a wider, clearer path. He hesitated. Sir said to clear the perimeter. Medic. This is part of it. He meant the effective perimeter. We don't have time for this bushwhacking. This path is fine. We'll say we checked it thoroughly from the edge. My voice was sharper than I intended. But what if there's something in there? He asked, his brow furrowed with genuine concern. He was such a stickler for rules. It was nauseating. There's nothing in there, Johnson. It's too thick. Nobody could hide anything in there without leaving a trail a mile wide. Just trust me. I gave him my most reassuring smile. The one I used when I needed something done without argument. The one that was just enough weaponized vulnerability to make him feel like he was doing me a favor, not just obeying an order. He looked from the brush to me, then back to the brush. He was torn. But the protocol is to get the job done and get back safe. I cut him off. And we're not going to do that if we spend all day poking around in every gopher hole. Now move. I'll cover this side. I waved my hand dismissively. He sighed, a small, defeated sound, and started walking along the clearer path, still glancing back at the dense brush with a worried expression. I watched him go, then took a few steps along the path he'd chosen. Just to make it look like I was checking, I kicked at a few rocks, scuffed my boots in the dirt. Then, I turned around and headed back towards where we started, walking at a brisk pace. I figured if Miller asked, I'd just say we covered it. Who was going to argue? Johnson? He wouldn't dare contradict me, not with his meek personality. When I got back to the rendezvous point, Miller was already there, looking at his watch. His face was grim. 35 minutes? Medic? What took you so long? Johnson's meticulous, Sir, I said, putting on my most tired, apologetic face. He was checking every single crevice. I tried to hurry him along, but you know how he is. Dedicated? We cleared the north side, though thoroughly. Nothing. I watched his face. He nodded slowly. Good. Good work. Medic, get some water. He even gave me a slight nod of approval. Success. Johnson wasn't back yet, but he would confirm it. He always did what I said. Eventually, he was a too nice guy, and those types are easy to manage. That night was different. The air was colder, and the usual distant sounds of the base seemed muffled. Somehow, we were on patrol again. A smaller group this time? Just Miller. Me, Johnson, and 2 others. It was supposed to be a quiet night. Just a routine check of a supply route. Miller was leading. Naturally. He was always at the front. Always the hero. Johnson was a few paces behind him. Then me. And the other 2 guys? Smith and Rodriguez, bringing up the rear. We were moving silently, our boots crunching softly on the gravel. The moon was a sliver, barely lighting the path. Suddenly, Miller stopped dead. He raised a fist, and we all froze. He was listening. The silence stretched, tense and heavy. Then, a faint click, and an instant later, a deafening explosion. It wasn't a huge explosion, not like a car bomb, but it was sharp, concussive. And right in front of us, Miller went down like a sack of bricks. I heard a scream, then another, high-pitched and ragged. It was Johnson. Chaos erupted. Everyone was yelling. Contact? Contact? Man down. My training kicked in, even though my hands were shaking. I scrambled forward, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. Miller was on the ground, twisted at an unnatural angle. Blood was spreading rapidly on his uniform. His leg was gone. Just a mangled mess. Johnson was next to him, screaming. He was clutching his arm, which was bleeding profusely. His face was covered in dust and tears. Medica. Someone yelled. Medic? Get over here. I dropped to my knees beside Miller. He was conscious, barely. His eyes were wide with shock. But he was trying to breathe. AED pressure plate, he gasped. His voice thin. My hands flew, trying to staunch the blood. Apply a tourniquet? It was a nightmare. The sheer volume of blood. I could feel my own heart hammering in my chest. The other guys were laying down suppressive fire. Even though we didn't know where the enemy was, it was just instinct. Johnson was still wailing. I told him we didn't clear it. I told him, medic. My head snapped up. I stared at him. He was looking at me with wide, accusing eyes. The others were too busy with Miller, or scanning the darkness, but his words hung in the air between us. I told him we didn't clear it. He was still rambling. That brush, the one you said to skip, it must have been in there. The wires. Oh, God. Medic? Why didn't we check it? My mind raced. He was spiraling. He was going to expose me. The panic was like a cold hand squeezing my throat. I couldn't let that happen. Not now. Not when Miller was bleeding out. And everyone was looking to me. Johnson. Shut up, I hissed. My voice low and urgent. You're in shock. We cleared that area. You were with me. Remember? I tried to catch his eye. To send him a silent message. Don't you dare. He shook his head frantically. No. We didn't. You said to go around. You said there was nothing there. His voice was cracking, rising with hysteria. Just then, Sergeant Davies, a grizzly old veteran, crawled over. What's going on? Medic? What's he rambling about? He looked from Miller to Johnson, then at me. His eyes narrowed. He was an emotionally shut down male, rarely showed anything. But he missed nothing. He was the type to scorekeep, to remember every little thing. He's disoriented, Sergeant, I said quickly, trying to sound calm. Professional. He took some shrapnel. He's in shock. I pointed to Johnson's arm. He needs immediate attention after I stabilize the platoon leader. Davies grunted, looking at Johnson with a mixture of pity and annoyance. Get him out of here. Smith? Get him back to the aid station. Smith, looking relieved to have an order. Half dragged Johnson away. Johnson was still muttering, but his voice was fading as they moved away. She said, she lied, the brush. I ignored it. I had to focus on Miller. He was fading fast. We got him airlifted out, but I knew it was bad. Later, we heard he'd lost his leg entirely, and probably wouldn't walk properly again. His career was over. And Johnson had a bad concussion and a deep gash in his arm. He was rattled. The debriefing was a nightmare. Everyone was shaken. Questions were flying. Why was there an IED on a route we just cleared? Who cleared it? I stuck to my story. Firmly. PFC Johnson and I cleared the north perimeter. Sir, we followed all protocols. There was nothing detected. They asked Johnson. He was still doped up. Confused. He kept mumbling about the brush, about me telling him to go around. But it sounded like incoherent babbling to the commanding officer. I made sure to interject. He's still dealing with the trauma, sir. He's very disoriented. Probably doesn't remember clearly. They looked at me, then at Johnson, then back at me. They probably thought I was being compassionate, understanding his trauma as a shield. I was just doing what I had to do. It worked. They wrote it off as a well-hidden IED, an unfortunate oversight, and Johnson's confusion due to his injuries. No one wanted to believe that one of their own would lie about something so critical. And I was the reliable medic, the one who kept her head. Johnson was just a kid, and clearly shaken. They even praised me for my quick action. For stabilizing Miller, it was a testament to my public versus private persona skills. Really, I could be sweet and competent in public, even when I was a mess inside. But Johnson, he knew, and he started to change. He became quiet, distant, an emotionally shut down male in the making. He avoided me. When he did look at me, his eyes were cold, accusatory. He never spoke about it to anyone else, not directly. But the silence, the way he flinched when I came near, it was louder than any accusation. He put in for a transfer, said he couldn't work with our platoon anymore, cited personal reasons. No one pushed him. He was a good kid, but clearly, the incident had affected him badly. The official story was that he was struggling with PTSD, which, he was, but not for the reasons they thought. He was just too sensitive, too much of a too nice guy. He couldn't handle the realities of the situation, the tough decisions you had to make. Miller, on the other hand, was furious. From his hospital bed, he started asking questions. He remembered telling us to clear that specific section. He remembered my report. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He started calling people, digging, demanding answers. He was a growth mindset man who suddenly had nothing but time to improve his understanding of what happened. He was obsessed. He kept bringing up little details. Medic. You said you were with Johnson the whole time, right? And he was checking everything. Yes, sir. Every inch. Like I said, he's very thorough. I'd say, my voice steady. No hint of a lie. I was a master of selective memory, remembering his demanding nature, forgetting my own shortcuts. But he was saying something about you telling him to skip that brush. Miller pressed, his voice hoarse from pain. He was saying it right after the explosion. Sir, he was in shock. He was delirious. People say all sorts of things when they're traumatized. I maintained my calm, measured tone. This was a classic gaslighting move, rewriting events, denying what he clearly heard. He's not delirious anymore. Medic, and he's still saying it. This was a problem. Johnson was quiet, but Miller was relentless. He was pulling strings, talking to people higher up. He wanted an official investigation into the perimeter clearance. He was making my life hell. He was using every past wrong as leverage, every demanding order he'd ever given. Scorekeeping, that's what it was. I started feeling the pressure. I was barely sleeping. Every time my phone rang, I jumped. I felt like I was being watched, talked about. The other medics, they started giving me weird looks. I'd catch them whispering. Then they'd go silent when I walked by. They were other women, always jealous, always judgmental. They probably just wanted my position, my good reputation. It was unfair. I was just trying to do my job, to survive. Why was everyone so focused on Mia? I was the victim here, being persecuted for an honest mistake, or rather, a necessary tactical decision. Miller was just bitter because he lost his leg. He needed someone to blame, and I was an easy target. He couldn't accept that sometimes bad things just happen. Then, The rumors started, quietly at first, then louder. Did you hear about medic Sarah? About what Johnson said. They say she skipped the clear. Miller's pissed. He's going to make sure she pays. My reputation, which I'd worked so hard to build, was crumbling. I was suddenly the liar, the one who got Miller shot. It wasn't fair. I was always reliable, always there when people needed me. I was the one who stitched them up, who held their hand when they were scared. Now, I was the villain. The military environment became toxic for me. Every interaction felt strained. Commanders started scrutinizing my reports, questioning my decisions. It wasn't overty, but I could feel the chill. My evaluation started slipping. The words lack of attention to detail and questionable judgment under pressure started appearing. It was all Miller. I knew it. He was pulling strings from his hospital bed, just to get back at me. He was weaponizing his insecurities. His injury? To bring me down. I tried to fight back. I told my side of the story to anyone who would listen. Johnson was confused. Miller is just angry. It's a witch hunt. I tried to cry, to show emotional manipulation, hoping to gain sympathy, but it felt hollow. I just couldn't conjure the tears anymore. I was too bitter, too angry. It didn't work. The narrative was set. Johnson's quiet persistence, combined with Miller's relentless pursuit of truth, had chipped away at my carefully constructed lies. They had used my double standards against me, demanding transparency from others while hiding my own lies. The final blow came when the transfer papers landed on my desk. Not a lateral transfer, not a promotion, a permanent reassignment to a small, isolated base, far from any action, a medical clerk position. My combat medic career, gone. Just like that. They said it was for my own safety and well-being, to remove me from a toxic working environment. Bullshit. It was punishment. It was their quiet way of saying I was done, without having to officially court-martial me. They couldn't prove I intentionally left the area uncleared, but they couldn't disprove Johnson's story either. So they just sidelined me. It was a permanent setback. My life, my entire future, turned upside down. I went from being a respected combat medic, on track for promotions, to being a glorified secretary in some godforsaken backwater. Financially, it wasn't a huge hit, but socially, professionally, it was devastating. I was isolated. None of my old contacts would return my calls. It was like I had the plague. I hated them all. I hated Miller for being so petty, for not just letting it go. I hated Johnson for being such a weak, spineless worm, for not just keeping his mouth shut. He was a too nice guy who, in the end, turned into a snitch. And I hated the military for being so quick to believe the worst, for not seeing my side of things. They were the ones who put us in that position, under that pressure. They were the ones who created the conditions for shortcuts to happen. It wasn't my fault. It never was. I sit here now, at my new desk, processing paperwork for minor injuries and routine checkups. No more adrenaline, no more purpose, just the slow, dull ache of resentment. I see the other clerks, gossiping, laughing. They don't know my story. They just see the new girl, the one who came from somewhere else. Sometimes, I still think about that night, about the dust, the explosion, the blood, about Miller's face, and Johnson's accusing eyes. But then I tell myself it wasn't my fault. I was under pressure. I made a judgment call. Anyone would have done the same. They just want someone to blame. And it just happened to be me. I was the victim here, caught in a crossfire of their incompetence and their need for a scapegoat. And I'll never let them forget it. They ruined my life, and they think I'm the one who needs to apologize. It's absurd, utterly absurd.